Welcome along, hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world today. This video is something a little bit different from my channel to warm up 2021. I've been doing some casual deck building, and while I was digging through the archives, I got to thinking about a tribal wish list for EDH. I'm a commander player who really loves building tribal decks, so if tribal magic, that sounds weird, is not really your thing, you're probably not going to get a lot out of this video. There have been a few prints of legendary creatures within the tribes I'm going to be talking about today, but I'll be focusing on the nature of the tribe itself and the potential of a specific general. A few of these decks I've been trying to build for years, so I'm making a fun wish list of cards that I would like to see, which would help bring my ideas together. The first tribe I'm going to talk about are elephants. At the time of this edit, we've got a few legendary elephants in print. The upcoming set has spoiled a couple of new ones in Wishlist, Clockwork Scholar, and Quintorius, Field Historian. Both creatures have that junk in the trunk with high toughness stats, but have relatively sweet else to do with the tribe otherwise. Quintorius is in Boros colors, and he commands a grey full of spirits rather than a herd of elephants, while Wishlist is designed around killing machines. Last year in my Commander Legends unboxing, I pulled Hamza, Guardian of Arishin, a more traditional Selesnian elephant chieftain, who naturally lends himself to the tribe. I'm still in the process of building a tribal deck with him as the commander, but when you take a higher view of his capabilities, Hamza capitalizes on the pure Selesnian approach of early game weenies with 1/1 counters that he can leverage. These here are some elephants and elephant-related cards who can fit into the overall strategy and work with 1/1 counters, and even get larger as the game goes on. But for Hamza to be most effective in a tribal deck, he's got to be down early. Compared to a non-tribal early game Selesnian creature base, elephants don't have the broad spread of early game creatures. There are a few low-cost options, but some of them are conditional, and you would need to season them with counters. In general, we associate elephants with ground combat, but they can be a diverse tribe. There are a few that support Hamza's strategy and are useful in his deck, but other creatures in that color are known for junk in the trunk. There are also several creatures in the type who take advantage of this thickness, and it would be interesting to have a mechanic that responds to that. The most powerful of the tribe are late game, which is where Hamza fits into the picture. That critical spread of early game creatures laced with 1/1 counters would then require enough card draw to enable one to dig into the big mothers on the higher end of the mana curve, who could then capitalize on Hamza's cost reduction. Most elephants are in the Selesnian colors, but there are some odd ones out who would make the battlefield an interesting threat, like Avalanche Tusker, who interestingly excludes white altogether and adds red and blue to the color identity. This helps in terms of card draw and haste, but elephants are traditionally in white, so Avalanche Tusker flies solo. Focusing on the white color identity, this leads most notably to Ivory Tusk Fortress in the Abzan colors. Now, it makes complete sense why Ivory Tusk Fortress is being excluded from a Hamza build. The simple commander who would want it for tribal support might feel aggrieved, but more adept EDH players could create all kinds of shenanigans around what Ivory Tusk could enable. It's a shame as he would fit Hamza perfectly, but it stresses why an elephant commander probably should be tribe specific to ensure that broken combos aren't accessible. So, for my wish, I would like to see an elephant commander in the Abzan colors to gain access to black, but still mostly enabling the hide thickening with a tribe-specific ability. An example prototype of this creature would have abilities such as whenever an elephant enters the battlefield under your control, bolster, and a secondary ability such as whenever a creature you control dies, you gain life equal to its toughness. This synergizes with cards that fit the tribe theme and the Abzan colors, and is even a little bit consistent with recent directions in contemporary sets. Now, remember when we used to play 60-card kitchen table casual, and we always used to have a pet tribe that we inexplicably attempted to build a deck around? For me, it was the Vyashino. I tried to make a Vyashino deck function, but sadly the creatures were never worth investing my A-grade support cards into. The creature I was drawn to the most was Viashino Weaponsmith, who gets +2/+2 whenever he's blocked. The mechanic I enjoyed synergizing him the most with was Provoke, but sadly by the time I could cast him and invoke Provoke, I was usually down to under 5 life. In Commander Legends we finally got Yurlok, a Viashino in Jund, who uses Mana Burn as his win con. In principle, I thought this was really interesting, sort of bringing back an expired rule. There are other tribespeople of his who can assist in putting pressure on life totals, and a couple of these, as we can see here, are even playable in EDH. Interestingly, if you look at these in tandem with your lock, you could create a deck that punishes an opponent just for playing Magic, but he more naturally leads alternative strategies rather than being a pure Viashino general outright. While they can pull off some tricks, as a tribe they are very combat oriented. Most of them do fall under the Jun colors, but one of the strongest Vyashinos is Glory Scale Vyashino, who is in the 9 colors. There are several others with white in their color too, who are very much battlefield oriented and can create combat pressure on your opponents. The other thing the Viashino were known for is what we might call their dash cycle. Creature cards with haste that bounce back to hand at end of turn. You wouldn't call these strong, but they can make for an interesting and annoying deck. I've paired back my vintage Viashino deck into a 60-card mono-red pauper deck, revolving around this dash theme, which banks on having enough red cards in hand to take advantage of some commons that depend on having a full grip of red. But that's neither here nor there, and irrelevant to the topic of this video. I just wanted to demonstrate my unhealthy fascination with the Viashino tribe. If I were to wish for a Viashino general, I'm going to come back to the mechanic of my old favorite in the Weaponsmith. In Commander, I prefer combat, and having creatures go toe-to-toe on the battlefield is my kind of deal. So something that feeds into that playstyle, and would enable me to employ as many of these creature cards as possible would be my wish fulfillment. I also wanted in Naya to give me access to those battle-hardened Viashino soldiers we saw earlier. So my general would be one with abilities like, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, provoke target creature and opponent controls. This would capitalize on the dash cycle, and also bring back another old mechanic in provoke. And perhaps a secondary ability like, whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This is battlefield oriented, and in contrast to my Elephant General, isn't necessarily tribe specific. Admittedly, I'd probably be one of a handful of players in the world whose eyes would light up at the thought of a playable Viashino tribe. But keeping these abilities generic would mean it could get broader usage in MTG. The last tribe on my wish list are Rhinos. We have one legendary Rhino in Rune of the Hidden Realm. Rune has relatively healthy stats, as well as Vigilance and Trample, which does allow him to fit into the Crash and Bash strategy of most Rhinos. But his major ability is the one that gets him the most attention and use in EDH. There are a few Rhinos that synergize with this ability, most notably Stonehorn Dignitary, who can create a frustrating combat lockout for one of your opponents. The two others on screen here are examples of this creature type who can create value with Rune, but I mean, there are more efficient creatures that can do this thing better, and you wouldn't really trust them with a long-term combat strategy. Perhaps not surprisingly, Rune's colors exclude the one Rhino that would turn him into a nightmare, namely the Mighty Siege Rhino, which is just as well, as this would make a Rune Rhinos deck too playable. For another color option, we've also got the Spiritual Rhino Commando in Girid, Conclave Exile. He probably best synergizes with what I would naturally be inclined to do with a Rhino deck build, in that he is battlefield oriented and can grow a board state really quickly. Wisely perhaps, there aren't a lot of Rhino token generators just yet, because in a Conclave Exile deck, that tribe could get out of control really fast as if it doesn't already enough. Naya does have a lot of supporting Rhinos who could benefit from the colors, and Jired is probably the most optimal commander for the Rhino tribe right now. And at the time of this video edit, we also have this monster on the way, who's going to take charging Rhinos to dangerous new levels of combat efficiency. All that said, I would still like an authentic Rhino commander. While the tribe has been getting useful support, dinosaurs have taken precedence in the big monster stakes lately. Take this card for example. Momentum Rumbler looks like a Rhino, it feels like a Rhino, that mechanic and those stats seem to say it does Rhino things, so I can't help but feel the older creature type has been shafted a little bit with the surge in popularity of dinosaurs in the game. Looking at Momentum Rumbler, it reminded me of this even older card called Momentum. The effect Momentum generates is triggered at the beginning of your upkeep, but putting something like this onto the body of a creature would be interesting. So, combining these two principles, I'm thinking of a Rhino with abilities and stats like Trample, and whenever this creature attacks for the first time each turn, put a momentum counter on it. Attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 for each momentum counter on this creature. Maybe that's too strong, maybe that's too weak, maybe it's not fair or balanced, I don't know. This is why I'm not designing cards. But like with the previous two tribes, it would give me a general who feeds into the playstyle I would love to build a Rhino deck around, and supports the main attributes of the creature base. Anyway, that's my wish list for some of my most nostalgic MTG tribes. I'm going to try and develop more content for the channel over the year, but times are tough out there, so we'll see how it goes. Let me know what you think, and if you have any favorite tribes you wish you could get a particular general for. Maybe we have a wish list in common. In the meantime, keep enjoying Magic, stay safe and take care, until the next edition.